Is the most inappropriate thing that you have ever witnessed at a funeral? 1. Many years ago my first wife's father was died. He was married at the time. He also had a girlfriend. When my mother-in-law, my now ex-wife, her grandmother and I arrived at the funeral we were expecting, of course, to sit on the front row. It is typical for the spouse to sit there. Unfortunately, the girlfriend with her children showed up prior to the wife and had seated herself and her kids on the front row. The wife, who had more restraint than I would have, decided not to make a scene and sat behind the girlfriend and her kids. If my memory serves me correctly, she did fire the girlfriend, who worked at the store now solely owned by my mother-in-law. I get that the girlfriend was also grieving. After all, her sugar daddy was now gone. If she had had more manners and civility at the funeral, she would probably have been given time to find a new job. My mill was a nice person, but since the GF intentionally embarrassed the wife in public, she didn't deserve to be treated nicely. 2. I recently attended the funeral of my estranged brother who had a very difficult personality. When I arrived, his widow took me aside and asked me if we had been raised to be racist. No, we hadn't. Well, my niece had married a black man, and even after 20 years together, and 4 children, he still was not allowed to step foot into my brother's home. Actually, though, my brother had suffered a stroke years earlier and was bedbound, requiring round-the-clock care for the last year of his life. During that time, his son-in-law snuck into the household and began doing certain odd jobs around the house that had been neglected, and keeping their lawn mowed, etc. The son-in-law was a very loving, forgiving man who did not make one single disparaging remark about my brother, although he certainly had that right. At the funeral, the son-in-law played piano beautifully, and his sister stood up to sing some gospel songs. It wasn't so much inappropriate, but I couldn't stop laughing at my apparently racist brother having some black gospel singers running his funeral. Not to mention that my brother was not exactly religious and the sisters were calling out praise the Lord quite frequently. Priceless. Definitely some karma going around. My brother was cremated, so could not manage rolling over in his grave, but I am quite certain there was a little dust swirling around in his urn. 3. This was back in the 90s. Grandfather had purchased an expensive cowboy hat and a new spanking set of boots on a trip to Houston. He kept them in a box and showed everybody his new acquisition with glee. I only saw them on him once or twice. They were stolen, vanished, abracadabra, poof, gone. His stepson had left his house after a 3-day visit and Gramp demanded his boots/hat back, stating the only person who had been there was him. Bud denied everything. This became a feud that went on for 6-7 years. Bud was a bad apple and had been in all kinds of trouble. Gramp never let it rest. All the gatherings devolved into the Bud story, which I totally understand, and Bud kept getting indignant and ranting his denials. This caused horrible tension between grandfather and Bud's mother, his second wife, who defended her 40-year-old son. Gramp finally dies, and who shows up to the funeral home in his cowboy hat and boots. Bad apple Bud. Aghast doesn't describe the shock and contempt we all felt. He stood beside the casket during the viewing and had his jeans, yes, jeans, tucked into the boots so there was a full view of his ill-gotten gains. His mother said nothing, but she had to have known that we thought they were trash. 4. When my partner Steve died unexpectedly. For Steve's funeral, my daughter and I went in the first limousine, with his daughters and ex-wife number 1. She had been unfaithful to Steve with his best friend, and left him for that friend, sat in the second limo. Steve wanted myself and